Hi Artie Smarties! So what you're going to be doing this week, and going from the book that I read you, we're going to be having a go at drawing this balloon dog, which is actually by an artist called Jeff Koons. Now, firstly, what you're going to do is you're going to need a pencil and maybe a rubber if you don't get it quite right first time. And you're going to need to have a look at one of the photos that I provide you of Jeff Koons' dog. Then what you're going to do is you're going to slightly change it in reference to the book, and you are going to make it into this wonderful pop art inspired sculpture instead. So you're going to need some colouring pencils or some felt tips later on. But first of all, we need to think about the form of this shape, of the shapes that this shows us. So you've got behind the leg and also in front, because you obviously need the four legs for the dog. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at this photo here to make sure that we know exactly what we've got to draw. So make sure that you've got your image close to you so that you can copy. And you're going to think about all of these in parts, so in shapes. So I'm going to make sure I've propped it up. You can't see that because it's out of shot, but I can definitely see it very clearly. Now you might want to turn your page this way or this way, depending on how big you want to draw. And then you're going to need to think about the shape. I would start with the middle. So you're going to sketch, remembering that your hand shouldn't be on the paper, otherwise it limits your hand to move, because we're going to be drawing ovals or things that have a circular shape. You can use your shoulder to do that. And then we're going to rub out the shape. So you've got, I'm sure you've all had a go or seen one of these balloons in real life before. And as you know, it's coming from a long balloon sausage and it's twisted and tied. So what we're going to do is we're going to make those shapes all together, and then we can rub out the shapes, the lines that we don't need. So you've got the tummy there. Then you've got a larger one for the legs. And it comes down a little longer. Again, this is how you're sketching. We don't want to sketch like this because that's going to take you a long time. Keep sketching, push really lightly and making sure they're touching, because as we know in real balloons, there would be a twist here to create the sections. Then you've got the leg behind, which would actually just come a bit low like this. And then you've got the tail, which is attached to both of these, so they need to touch as well. So this is just going to look like a series of different circles. And then you've got the little bit of the balloon that hasn't been pumped up to give us the tail. There we have it. So we're going to try and match the leg now. This can be a bit tricky, so you might want to just draw a line. No need to use a ruler, and try and get your other oval to match. Here like this. You want it to be the same length, otherwise we'll have a wonky dog, which we don't want. You've got your oval again here, and underneath. It's going to appear shorter because it is further away, of course. Slightly shorter. And you can start to see that the dog is appearing. So now you need to again make the neck connect with the body and the legs, because as you know, there would be a twist. Make it all come together like this. And then you've got the nose coming here, and you've got the ears. So I'm going to draw the ears first. I wonder if any of you guys could actually make this in a balloon. I find it always fascinating to watch people make these balloon sculptures. Very tricky, and with always the risk that their hard work and effort is always going to be ruined very quickly by a big pop. Okay, there we have the ear. So you want to get your angles quite right. So just take a step back and make sure you can have a look. And then we'll finish off by getting that more of a pointed angle in here, look, with our face of our dog. Now Jeff Koons does lots of different sculptures, that of course aren't made from balloons, but they are made to look like balloons by different materials and the highlights that you can see in our picture originally. And he uses different metals and casts his sculptures, but of course his design will always come from a drawing first. Always remember that. Don't ever skip the drawing part out. It's always incredibly important to draw first, because of course everything on this planet has probably been drawn first, whether it's by hand or whether it's been on a computer. It's been drawn and drafted by an artist or an architect or a designer or somebody. So try and have a go at drawing it first. And there you have it. We've got a series of circles and ovals and shapes that come together to make a form. So pause the video there, have a go, and then we'll come back and I can show you exactly how to paint it. What we want to do is we want to create our pop art inspired illustrations, and that's lots of bright colour, bold lines, and using lots of different pattern to change your dog so it is unique to you. You don't have to include any features if you don't want to, just have a play with your design. So hopefully by now you should have drawn your dog here, and now it's time to rub out some of the lines that we don't need, of course. So use a rubber to rub out any not needed lines. So rub that out there. I think we'll rub out those ones that want it to be a bit thicker. You can rub out the lines in between. Just remember where they are, because they do overlap. So you might want to include that in your colour. So obviously the legs behind, you might decide that that needs to be a darker tone. So use your knowledge of value, shade and tone to colour your Jeff Koons dog. So you're just reflecting on your drawing now, making sure you've got the best shapes possible, rubbing out any lines you don't need. And that's what's great about sketching, is that you can, because you've pushed so lightly using your HB, you can just rub out lines that you don't need. There we have it. So, personally, as a material for paper, I would choose watercolour paints, or you can choose pencils. Felt tips are good, but you need to make sure that when you are felt tipping, that you are always colouring and filling in the space in one direction, otherwise it can look very messy. So some of you may have watercolours at home, which is excellent. However, I'm just going to use colouring pencils, but it's entirely up to you what you'd like to use. So first of all, I'm going to use my HB, and like I said before, you're just going to have a go at practicing those patterns. So having a research and looking at your worksheet, you'll see that I've included some different pop art images, and hopefully you'll have some ideas about what it is that pop art is. So of course, you can use dots, you can use pop shapes, it's entirely up to you. So I'm going to speed up now and show you how my pattern develops and what you can do to add pattern to your dog. Okay, so now I have my dog to play with and I can start to paint or show some different colours on here. Now pencil crayon of course is easier because you can control your pencil a lot easier than you can with paint, but also you can make it into mixed media, which is also a great idea, just to experiment yourself with all of your different materials that you have at home. So if you have coloured pencils or felt tips, it's up to you. I've got Posca markers, paint and pencils here, and I'm just going to experiment with them all. Now one thing we know about pop art is that it's fun, it's colourful, and it uses lots of different marks and colour to represent these different fun objects. So what you're going to do is, once you've made all of your sculpture, your drawing, your design a different colour, you're going to outline it with black, just as we did with our pop art paintings. And also just make sure that you're really doing some excellent control of your colour here. Now, as I said before, felt tips can be a little tricky. Just make sure you're going in the same direction and keeping within your drawn lines. Now, one thing you can do also to show that you understand value and where dark and light is coming from, you can add in a darker colour. So I've got some darker blue here, and I know that the neck is actually behind. I want it to look like it's behind the stomach there. So what I've got here is just some dark purple, or you can use dark blue if I have it somewhere. If you don't have it, just use dark purples. And I'm going to just show and blend in some darker tones in the places that would be darker, and just blend them in together. You should be able to do that with your pencils, no problem. And as you can see, it's looking slightly darker here. So it's going to give the illusion, especially in the parts where it would be timed, it gives the illusion that it's darker or behind the other part of the body. So I've had a go with my pencils now. I've got some felt tips here. So I'm going to have a go at this part here. So felt tip pens are great to fill in colour and space. But when you overlap felt tip pens, it can show dark areas because of the two layers of felt tip pen. So that is why it's very important with felt tips, is that you always go the same direction so that you don't have too many layers on top of each other. Always good, the same as painting, if you do the edges first and then paint inside. Pen inside, should I say. Also got a Posca marker here. Which can be a little tricky with these pens, because you might find this too. Sometimes the nib of the pen or your paintbrush is just a bit too big, which can be tricky. So make sure you select your shape that is big enough to be able to fill the space. Also, a wonderful thing about these pens is that if you do go a little bit untidy on your edges, you will be able to just neaten it up with the black pen that you will do at the end. Your colouring and your filling in of space with your colour, whether that's paint, pencils or felt tips, should always be filled with really bold, bright colour. You shouldn't be able to see the page underneath. I can have a little go at using my paint as well. So always remembering to do your pushing. It's a lovely feeling to paint. And once again, we want to show a bit darker, so I'm going to use a little bit of dark blue here. Of course, makes that dark purple that we used on our other side to just show it's just a little bit darker underneath. Remember, places underneath won't get as much light on top. You want to show that in your paint as well, and you can mix the two together. So of course I could mix some dark blue and also show that on the leg as well. Come back to it later. Blend it in with some water so you start to get those tones as well. So as if by magic, I'm going to click. And there we have it, your completed pop art style Jeff Koons dog, the balloon dog. So now it's your turn to have a go. Have fun!